Hello, everyone. I'm Katy and welcome to the Katy G Legal Podcasts. The mission of my podcast is for us to realize that we're really, really great, whether that means we're lawyers or people, and that we can be even greater. And most importantly, how can we bring this greatness to the world of law and to the world of our humanity as people and lawyers through a brand? Why I do this podcast is I always say two reasons. One, I truly care about humanity deeply, and your humanity as a human being first and as a lawyer. And I want us all to see how great we really are so we can be happier and more fulfilled in our careers and in our lives. And second reason, and look, I struggled with my own feelings of being less than just like you. And some days are good and some days are ugly. And we're here to learn from our guests. So this time I have a very special guest for you today. I have Moshe Amsel, and he is host of Profit and Law Podcast and the owner of and the producer of the Law Firm Growth Summit, which is coming right up. Very timely conversation. And I'm trying to remember how you and I met, because we met years ago, didn't we? First of all, welcome. And then let's see if we can figure out where we met.
Well, thank you for having me. I think our paths crossed on LinkedIn, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but I think we connected there first. But I'm not sure.
Wow. It was years ago, though. I remember that much. And then we reconnected about the Law Firm Growth Summit, which hopefully you'll tell us about here in a couple of minutes. But first of all, tell us a little bit about your background, your story, what you're up to, how you got to where you are, however way you want to tackle it. We will listen to an interesting story.
Sure. How much time we got? Because it can take a couple of days, but I'll take you through the Cliff Notes version. It's really interesting how I got to where I am today. But I grew up a Orthodox Jew, and therefore I got married really young, had children really young. So at the age of 19, I already had my first child, and therefore it really lit a fuel under my butt to go out and conquer the world in a very expeditious fashion. And I started out in IT, and I had a six-figure income, and I owned a house by the time I was 21. I also had two children by the time I was 21.
Wow.
And my oldest, who's now 23, is actually working in my business. She's our podcast producer, along with many other things that she does. She's our copy editor for our emails, and she's a rock star. But when so because I had this fast track start to life and kind of just did things because I had to, I never really took the time to figure out what is it that I want to do and how do I want to show up in the world in a way that's going to leave it a better place when I'm done. And I had this reset when my ex-wife and I got divorced. And during that time post-divorce, I really started to reevaluate my entire life and everything, like my religion. I'm no longer practicing Orthodox Jew. I still identify as a Jew, but I changed what I'm doing there. But I also started to really think about, what do I want to do? I don't want to be known for salvaging somebody's server from a cyber attack. I really want to do something more in this world. And my inspiration came from my grandfather. So my grandfather came from Nazi Germany with his father, lost the rest of his family in the Holocaust, and they really had to start from scratch. And his father started a business, and then he in turn started a business when he was old enough, and he was a diamond merchant. And together with four of his cousins, they all had some success in their business, and the three or four, five of them got together and bought an apartment building in the west side of Manhattan. And that apartment building brought in some income for them, but it also was amassing some capital wealth as time went on. And in his later years, he and his cousins started to convert the units into co-ops, and it created some cash that he had. And what did he do with it? Well, he had 36 grandchildren, and he gifted every one of his grandchildren a down payment for their first home purchase. And that little help of, receiving that as a young parent, young family, being able to start with, the American dream in a way that, I mean, people save for years for the down payment of their first home purchase, and
True.
being able to just get a leg up and start and own a home early, really changed the trajectory of my own personal financial journey, and therefore impacted me in a very tremendous way. And I felt like I want to do that for others. I want to help people create generational wealth. And what's the best way to do that? Well, you got to have cash come from somewhere. Now, yes, there are people who become wealthy just from working a 9 to 5 and being really prudent with what they do with their money. But the real truth is that business owners have the potential of amassing true generational wealth, because you can create a business that throws off a ton of cash, and then you can choose what to do with that cash.
Mm.
So I really started to dive into, how do I help business owners? And I went back to school, became an accountant, and started a typical accounting firm. But I wanted to separate myself from the rest of the accountants out there. So I aligned myself with the Profit First brand. It's a book by Mike Michalowicz that talks about cash management, cash flow management. It gives you a simple solution. It's grandma's envelope system for budgeting, but for your business, where you have multiple bank accounts and you earmark the money for different things. And that prevents you from overspending, because if you don't have it, you don't spend it.
Wonderful.
And basically, I became a Profit First professional. And then through my association with Profit First, I got a lead, and it was a law firm. And that law firm became my client, who then referred another law firm, who then became my client. And before I knew it, I had 5 law firms that were my clients. 4 of the 5 firms all had the same problem, and that was very cash poor. Um, they had beautiful, beautiful offices. They had staff. It was all of them were multi-attorney firms. They were working with a coaching organization that helped them get there, but there was a complete blinders, obliviousness to, how do we actually make money? And what was happening behind the scenes with every single one of these was, they were transferring personal funds to cover payroll every 2 weeks. They were transferring personal funds to cover rent. They were pulling money out when they had it, and putting it in their personal bank account, and then all of a sudden they were left, scrounging and trying to figure out how do I cover payroll the next cycle. And that really was an eye opener to me. And I realized that there's an industry where um, there's no focus during the education of that profession on business. And law firms are created by lawyers who, you know some of them do have business sense, some of them do have business education, but many of them do not. And that creates a situation where you kind of have a feeling of what you need to do, but you run your business based on feeling. And so many mistakes that are made along the way could be prevented by simply having some guidance. And that's really where Profit with Law was born.
Yeah, so that you and I have that in common. You know, as a former, I mean, once a lawyer, always a lawyer, former securities lawyer, I can tell you, we're not taught any of that in law school. We're not taught anything that you teach or that I teach, which is why you do what you do and I do what I do. We're literally taught the substantive practice of the law. And actually, it's true for dentists. My husband's a dentist, lawyers, doctors. Professionals are not taught this in higher education, which is a travesty, because they take our money and then they're like, good luck with that. Now go out there and make it work. And as lawyers, we tend to put our blinders on and stay focused with the substantive practice. One, because it's more comfortable, right? Change is hard. And I don't know how many lawyers tell you this, but a ton of lawyers who are my clients tell me, I didn't go to law school to be a leader, to be a marketing expert, to know my brand and sell it, and to figure out who I am and manage all this. And so it's a sticky wicket at best, and it's rather unfair. However, lawyers are smart, and if they hire the right people, like you're talking about, there's nothing that we can't learn. Obviously, it's just a managing time and perspective, right? Is that what you found as well?
Yeah, and honestly, like, as I help attorneys more and more, I've been learning myself along the way. At the early onset of my coaching business, I was helping people to become the expert at all those things. And what I realized is that that's not what they need. Um, a lawyer doesn't need to become a marketing expert. A lawyer doesn't need to become a great bookkeeper. What a lawyer needs to do is hire people to do those things and invest in their business. We live in an interesting time where, for $100 you can have a business, right? I mean, literally for $100 you can have a stack of business cards, a website, and a phone line, and you're good to go, right? And that's it. I'm open for business. I can handle clients. I can, yeah. Of course, over time, there's a lot more to it, but the reality is that if you wanted to open a law practice 25 years ago, the first thing you would do before you did anything else was look for a space. You'd sign a lease.
True.
And then you had an office. You had to put people in it. So you'd put some people in it. So the barrier to entry was, hey, I need $500,000 in the bank so I can open my law firm. But today, nobody's approaching it that way. And what that's doing is it's creating this situation where lawyers are thinking, I need to do this all myself because I didn't think about investing in the growth of my law firm. But the reality is you need to invest $3,000 to $5,000 a month in marketing. You need to invest $3,000 to $5,000 a month in people. You need to invest $3,000 to $5,000 a month in technology and other overhead items. And if you don't have a runway of cash to do that, then you probably started too early, right? You didn't enter it with the right plan. So I've changed gears with how I help law firms over time, because we don't want to be focusing on how do I become the best marketer. That's not your job. You need to have a marketing team, whatever that looks like. It's not necessarily I hire 3 marketers to work in my office. You could start off hiring a marketing agency or, a marketing company, or even a consultant who's going to be leading your marketing strategy. But you don't have to figure out Google My Business and Avo and your website and, headshots and videos and all that stuff. Like, that is not a good use of your time.
So what do you say to lawyers who say to you, because well, I don't get this pushback because I'm a lawyer too, but oftentimes our mentality is, I'm smart enough to figure that out. I can do that by myself and I can save some money. And why would I not do that by myself? I mean, I can be in control of it too, right?
Yeah, you absolutely can do that yourself. And you can also wait 20 years to be able to tell everybody how successful you are.
True that, although they'll probably sweep that under the rug. But yeah, fair enough. I totally respect your viewpoint. And I hope listeners that you're really taking this in from a neutral place where you can put your ego to the side and not feel like I can figure this out by myself. I'm not going to waste money spending it with someone who's going to tell me how to make profits. I'm smart enough to do that. I really hope you can kind of come at this from a beginner's mind, because I think you'll get a lot of good nuggets. And speaking of nuggets, so what would be the top 2 to 3 insights you want lawyers who are listening to take away from this conversation?
Well, the very first thing that I do with anybody so I run a group coaching program. It's called the Law Firm Growth Elite Group Coaching Program. It's very original name. But basically what I do in that program is I help lawyers with getting really, really focused on the growth of their business. And it all starts with creating a plan. So, if I'm going to give you 3 nuggets, the first one's going to have to be a plan, right? It's you gotta have a written plan for what you plan to do, because it's very simple. When you actually start to sit down and look at the numbers, and you say, hey, I'm charging X amount of dollars for a client, or X amount of dollars per hour, and if I'm able to do X amount of hours per work in a day, and I start extrapolating that out, all of a sudden I look at what my annual revenue can be. And now I look at what does it cost to create that. When you start to put those numbers on paper, what's funny is that often the numbers don't work.
True.
A lawyer should be getting, and this is just a very broad number because it's different at every stage of law firm growth. But let's just say your profit margin after all expenses should be 40%. The IRS is going to, and your state are going to take about 15%. So you'll be left with 25, right? So that means if you're running a $500,000 law firm, you should be after tax taking home 125 to 150,000, clear of tax, which means that you're probably taking home 200,000, right? But there's a lot of lawyers. Like there's an attorney that I met that was earning $2 million in revenue in their firm, but they had 1.95 million in expenses, which means that they're doing all that work to bring all those clients and employ all those people to operate a $2 million firm, and they've got $50,000 to show for it at the end of the day. It also means that they have so little margin for error. Like one little mistake, one incorrect hire, and boom, you're losing money. How could it be worth it to be operating a business like that for that purpose? Now, how did that person get there? They got there because they didn't work out the numbers on paper. They didn't pay attention as they grew. So when you're not profitable at stage 1 and you grow to stage 2, all you're doing is expounding the same mistake and making it bigger. And that continues throughout the growth of your firm. And then you're left wondering, like, what am I doing wrong? I'm working, but I really like nothing's happening. Like the firm is getting bigger. More people are talking about it. We have a better name and I'm employing people. But at the end of the day, I still can't afford to take my family on a vacation. I'm still tied to the desk. I'm still stuck here. And so that all starts with a plan. That all starts with having a plan. The second thing that I'll share is, so I created a framework. We call it the Law Firm Growth Formula. And that framework is based around this concept that there's 3 stages to law firm growth. There's the planning stage, which you just talked about. And then the next stage is the growth stage. And then there's the scale stage. So what happens is that often we're moving the pieces all at the same time. And what we need to do is we kind of need to step into the growth. So law firms have a capacity. Now, when you start, it might just be you. You're the capacity for your firm, and you need to fill your capacity before you bring on the next, right? But there's a certain amount of work that you have the capacity to fill, and you need to fill that work before you add more capacity. At the same time, you can't continue to take on clients when you don't have the capacity to work with them. So you have to also have a scale mode. You have to have a mode where I'm intentionally creating more capacity. When you're in that stage, you're not going to be, for a brief moment, you're not going to be at 40% profit margins, right? For a moment in time, you're going to be spending money on that capacity before you fill it. But at the same time, you also need to then step into that role of filling that capacity. So the second nugget is basically don't go out of order. Like, create room for growth, but then fill that, and then sit there for a moment and actually enjoy it, reap the benefits, take the rewards, take the profits, do something with them, save for the next stage of growth, and then grow again. So it's really just not putting the cart before the horse is really the second nugget.
And what's the third one?
Oh, and the third one. Let's see. So I'm ad-libbing here, and I'm trying to think between all the different things that I share. What is what is the most impactful to make my third nugget? And for me, that would be to not be afraid of the money conversation. Um, Fear of talking about money and fear of looking at money is really the thing that gets us in the most trouble, because if we stick our head in the sand deep enough, then maybe we won't have any issues with money. Or if I don't look at my bank account, then maybe I won't know that it's negative today, right? Like, and that's really the way that we operate. Even though we know it's bad for us, we know that it can't be done that way. I would even encourage you to be transparent with your numbers with your team. And this is something, like, people are afraid, like, I don't want to share that. I don't want to share it with other
Like
people.
I'm not successful, right?
Right. But the reality is how is your team supposed to know? Like, we're afraid to share numbers with our team because we're afraid they're going to go running for the hills, right? Like, if they really knew what was going on here, they'd be worried about where's my next paycheck coming from. But the reality is that you want them all pulling in the same direction. You want them understanding that there's a business. You want them understanding that there's a profit incentive, that we need to have a profit. And once you're willing to share numbers, you might be willing to share numbers with them in dollars too, meaning profit sharing in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't need to be official. It doesn't need to be, partners or anything like that, but reward your team for the success of your business. And that success is going to be guided by you being profitable. And therefore, you actually have something to share with them. And
Well,
now they can even, pull in the same direction as you. So I didn't want to go too much into that profit sharing tangent, but the reality is that knowing your numbers and having a handle on them and being able to therefore know what your projections are and know what, everything that we do revolves around the numbers. Even my planning exercise that I shared with you before, I shared the example of numbers, right? And
yeah,
because that's the name of the game. And you don't have to have a lot of law firms were not started to seek profit. A lot of them were started because they want to help a certain area of clientele or a certain area of law, or they
skill.
want to they want to help the world at large, or they want to become philanthropic. But all of those things require money. You can, if you're working pro bono, it can only last so long, right? So we charge money to say we're not working pro bono, but the reality is that if you're not taking money home at the end of the day, you're working pro bono, right? So we don't want to have a business just to be able to show that we have a business. We want to have a business that's going to actually do something for our lives, and that requires you to really pay attention to the numbers, and to the extent that you're watching your P&L every month, your profit and loss or income statement every month, that
So
you
more,
understand how to read it
so
and
more,
how to look at
tell
it.
me, tell me about the Law Firm Growth Summit. Are we going to learn more about this there?
Oh, of course. So the Law Firm Growth Summit is really a brainchild of various conversations that I've had in my podcast. So you're a podcast host, through the podcast, I meet a tremendous amount of amazing people. And when I first started the podcast, literally within 6 months, I had met so many people that I said, one second, like, how are we getting all this information out to everybody? Like, how is everybody learning this stuff? Like, these are incredible people with incredible knowledge that it's going to be instrumental in people's business growth. And I realized that there is no stage in the law firm industry specifically for uh, growing a business. There's all kinds of stuff out there, but usually it's on substantive law, and they happen to have a session that they throw in on growing your business or marketing or something like that, or it's run by one of the software companies, and their agenda is about their software, and they're through the lens of their software, they're going to tell you how to market or how to sell or how to run a business. But there really is nothing that's completely oriented on the business itself. So what I decided to do is to remove the barrier to entry. So make it virtual, make it free, and take away all the excuses why somebody can't attend. The only excuse left is time. And if you can't dedicate 3 days to get information from over 30 industry leaders and experts, I can't help you. I just can't, right?
Prioritizing things. So that's a very good point. So it's coming right up for us, for our listeners. And in fact, I'll be speaking, and that's how we reconnected. I'll be speaking on how to, as one of your speakers, on how to create. Lawyers often ask me this, law firms do, hey, we want to create a diversity initiative. Well, first of all, diversity is not an initiative, diversity is life.
Mm-hmm.
And so the easy way of doing that, and I'm going to share that plan with everybody. And truly, it is easy because it's different. This is not hiring someone who looks diverse and having a shrink wrap plan that sits on the shelf. And I think that is part and parcel with what you're talking about, the ability for people to have a plan around their entire firm in terms of a business. And diversity is part of the business plan, because if you don't have diverse interests represented, you're not going to have creative solutions, from finance all the way down to client development and retention. So, yeah, please look for the link in the show notes, everyone, and it's free. And use that link and go and get yourself educated. And again, if you can't find time to do this, then to Moishe's point, I want you to stop and think about why. Where are you putting your time? How efficiently are you using your time? These are all things we work with clients on my end so that they can actually then show up and use other tools like the law firm Profit in Law podcast and Moshe's tools. Because otherwise, if you're not of that mindset that you're worth it and you're able, then no tool we put in front of you will be worth it. So show up here and let's start by making a difference in that capacity. And we'll drop the URL in the show notes. So, last part of this podcast, listeners are always, trying to put themselves in my guests' shoes. And my goal is always to show my listeners, hey, look, my guests are dealing with things too. So, what's a challenge on your plate and how can I coach you through it?
Okay, so a challenge I'm facing this week is as follows. We invite speakers to our event, and the entire premise of how the event happens, how do we make it free? How do we make it possible to put this on for everybody? Well, the way that we spread the word is through our speakers. And
Yep.
our speakers are the intention, and it's very clear when they sign up to be a speaker. We ask them, are you willing to promote, and how are you willing to promote? And the challenge that we have, and we have this every time we run it, this is the third time that we're running it, is there's just some speakers who just don't take the action. And we make it so easy for them. And you've seen what we do.
Yeah,
We create the graphics for them. We write the copy for them. Like, we literally hand them everything on a silver platter and say, here, copy and paste this, upload this image and post it on your social. Copy and paste this, put it in your email and send it out to your people. But there's a number of speakers who just aren't promoting. And this year, I finally have the team to be able to have somebody dedicated to reaching out to them to say, hey, look, we're in the final week. We really need you to go out there and promote. And that person can't reach them. They can't, like, even if they are reaching them, they say, yes, they'll do it, but then they don't do it. So that, I mean, if we're being transparent, like, that's a challenge that I have right now, is just trying to figure out, like, what is the solution? Because every year I say, okay, this year is going to be better. We're going to be more clear about it. We're going to, short of, one of the conversations I had with my wife the other night was, do I go and just tell those speakers you're uninvited?
Well,
You
that's a
know?
good point. And I'm glad you're bringing this, I'm coaching you through this as one of your speakers. I noticed that right away and it was very clear. I got it. So much so that the person who's in charge of me, I actually forward my emails that I send to my mailing list onto her. And I say, I feel like I have to report in to the boss, which is my funny way of saying, like, I owe it to you guys to show you that this email went out to my entire list, because I can't force people to sign up for it, but I can do my part. And how would you know? So I get what you're saying. My recommendation is something that you're going to have to build time for. However, I know it's going to work. And it is literally to have a face-to-face conversation with anyone that you're wanting to be a speaker, 15-minute max, and say, these are my rules, and look them in the eye and say, are you okay with that? Do you think you could live up to your end? Because it's very important, because I want to promote you and I want to support you. And I don't want you to have a bad brand as a result of, what do you think about those speakers, Moisha, when they don't do their part? You think they're low integrity, or they just can't manage their time, back to the earlier conversation, right? And that why would people want to sign up for their programs? Because if they can't hold their end of the bargain, which you're right, it's not very difficult to do. I had to put concerted time and effort into it. But once I did, it was hard to do. So I would recommend that, because there's nothing that beats a face-to-face. I got your number and I'm going to sign you up, because you do that with an email, but that email, people don't read their emails, is what I'm telling you is probably happening. I think everyone has best of intentions, but I think the one step that you're shy of is the visual confirmation, because also throughout all this, I'll tell you, I didn't know how I could get a hold of you. Like, I don't have your email address. And if I wanted to relay something to you outside of your assistant, I felt you were too far out of reach. So, this is something for every listener to listen to. Where do we draw our boundaries against being bombarded by people? Because we're busy servicing our clients and being with our families, which is very important, and having harmony in our life with that. but when is it that we could be a little more accessible to people or reach out to people? So I guess those are my two coaching points for you. Reach out directly to people, schedule 15 minutes and make it very clear I only need 15 minutes of your time. Frankly, this could be a 5-minute conversation before you enroll them. And then somehow make yourself a little more accessible to the speaker so that they feel like they're truly part of your team rather than part of a cog in a wheel that's being reached out to by a canned email. I think it's done beautifully, and I think you've spent so much time and energy and money into it. You should really be rewarded for that. But if that's the result you're getting, that's my coaching feedback. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. The first time that I did it, it was just me, right? Like I didn't I had one assistant in the Philippines who was doing my graphics, and it was just me. And I was literally having these conversations with everybody. Even then, and I had all the speakers' cell phone numbers, and even then, the very first time we had 30 plus speakers, and 7 of them actively promoted. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I'm receiving what you're saying, because I do think that I've made myself purposely more inaccessible. That's been very intentional. Like I have developed a team because this is not something that can be done alone or
Yeah,
should be done alone. And I have to practice what I preach, right? Like that
true.
I am teaching my or demonstrating to my clients what's possible. And I should not have to. There's, I mean, 30 people, 30 plus, right? It's more than 30. It's closer to 40 by the time we're done with sponsors and everything. It's a lot of people to have to feel like I have to have conversations with leading up
True.
to a major event.
True.
Um, and I am, yes, other types of conferences and stuff, they're not necessarily having people promote for them. Um, but I can't imagine that the founder of legal tech or whatever it's called, is going to be calling their speakers the week before or 2 weeks before to say, hey, don't forget to spread the word about it. Like it's not. I don't know. I don't know that making myself more accessible is going to solve it, but I'm certainly happy to give out my cell phone number. Like
Well,
it's no problem. Everyone can have it.
try it out and see if it works. Because if it doesn't work, I hear you loud and clear. It could very well be a symptom of the following. As a professional public speaker, I run into this a lot. And sometimes I just moderate like panels. And it is like herding cats, right? And people are so overwhelmed, over texted, over tweeted, over caffeinated is the phrase I've coined and use all the time,
I love it.
that they cannot seem to wrap their brain around one more thing. And it comes from a true place of intention, but failed intention. So it could just be that you can't count on speakers to promote anything, because it's the what's in it for me mentality, and you provide plenty of incentive on the back end, don't get me wrong. It's just that I wonder if the speaking community just can't make time, even if you gave them, I don't know, $1 million and said, do it. Frankly, I wonder if people would check their emails to know that there's $1 million in it for them. So if you're listening to this, is this a symptom you have too? Are you just unable to show up and do those things that are good for you, that are good for your business, because you're so overwhelmed with life? It's something we see with lawyers all the time. And is there one cure? Of course not. But the only cure I tell people is stillness, stopping and reflecting on just sitting silently, quietly, still. Call it meditation, whatever the heck you want to call it. But if you cannot get yourself still long enough to have a coherent thought and to come across as a brand that others want to be around, these are the repercussions. You're not going to get booked as a speaker anymore. People aren't going to feel like you're really present. Clients are certainly not going to feel that way, and colleagues aren't. Why would you refer me, Moisha, to your client base and vice versa if we don't feel that you can service my clients well? So, as listeners, I hope you're picking up on this. This is not just Moisha's dilemma. This is a lot of people's dilemma, because we see that. That is your brand not an action. Okay. And we don't want that to be, or, now you're making it his dilemma, right? Because you're not holding up your end of the bargain and being responsible. So on your end, Moshe, I think that's the most you can do. And then you have to just, innovate and switch gears, which you're good at, and come up with a plan B. And, I think the conversation you had with your wife is pretty fair. You put that out there. If on X date, by X date, we don't have X number of, output by you, then Y happens. And you get to decide what Y is based on your, programming. I don't think that's unfair, especially if people have been put on notice and have been given an opportunity to rise to the occasion. So I hope that was helpful. If people want to reach you, where can they reach you at?
Oh,
Are
now you
you
want me to give out my cell phone number on your show, right?
No, let's give out your email if that's okay, or some version of, people actually reach out with good questions, I've been told. So no one's going to abuse it, right, listeners? We're just going to be able to ask you questions if we have them.
Yeah, honestly, email. I mean, I could give you my email address. It's going to, it's long. It's mamsel at dreambuilderfinancial.com. So it's MAMSEL at dreambuilderfinancial, no S in the middle.com. And I'm sure you'll put that in the show notes so people don't have to
Yes,
try to write that down or
well,
remember it. But the reality is that I am active on social. There are 3 platforms I'm active on. It's Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Facebook being the most active, LinkedIn second most active, Instagram third. So you can find me. My name is hyphenated. It's Rosenblum-Amsel on both Facebook and LinkedIn, and it's without the hyphen, just Amsel on Instagram. But any of those platforms, you can friend me, you can connect with me, you can message me, and I will respond to your messages there. Those are not managed by my assistant. My email is. I don't check my email. I have somebody who does that and communicates on my behalf in my email.
that's a good tip.
So
That's
you
a good
will get Veronica and not me when you send me an email at that email address.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you for taking time. Thank you for putting in the effort to make lawyers better business people and better at money management. We appreciate it. On behalf of all lawyers, I thank you, and I look forward to seeing you at the summit. And any last word that you want to leave us with?
Well, first, I'm excited for your talk, and I'm excited to invite your listeners into the event. I'm excited for the event. It's coming up like right around the corner. By the time we're recording this, we're literally 5 days away. So I'm sure that when they're listening to this, it's going to be less than that. So definitely don't hesitate. Go sign up. It's free. Like worst comes to worst, you get taken. There's a sales page right after where you could buy the recordings. They're not expensive. You'll be offered a fast acting discount of $197, and you can get the recordings of all the sessions. So even if you're not, hey, I'm not going to be available from December 5th to the 7th, no problem. Last parting piece of wisdom or piece of advice that I want to share. We didn't make it any of the points, but it's something that has really served me well to understand 2 things as a business owner. One is what got you here won't get you there, and the second is that you must take action. And one of my friends said it really well: you can't steer a parked car, and I love that line, because the reality is that if you're just sitting in indecision, wondering, should I do this? Should I not do this? And you actually don't execute and do it, what's going to be guaranteed is that you're not going to get the result you're trying to get. And also recognizing that if something worked for me before, I'm just going to keep doing it again, doesn't work when you're growing your business. Every stage of business is a different stage of growth, and you always have to be seeking the new knowledge, seeking the new information. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, I got it figured out finally, and this past year I grew from 100,000 to 250,000, and now I'm making some money, and I don't need any help. Guess what? A lot of people who went from 250 to a million, or from a million to 10 million, they sought out help along the way. And the smart thing to do is to get that help, and whether it's in the form of the conference, whether it's in the form of a coach, whether it's in the form of just doing some research, or being in a mastermind, or having buddies that have done what you're trying to do. There's a lot of different ways to do that. but don't try to go it alone, because you're just going to get in your own way. You're going to get in your own head and sit in this indecision place instead of taking action, which is not going to help you. It's not going to help you grow.
Amen. Well said. Change is not easy for my clients, your clients, or for lawyers. Law is based on precedents. It's not easy for us. However, not being in action, not being open to any form of change is comfortable, but it is also extremely stagnating. And your clients sense that, folks, as you're listening to this. And if this conversation is making you extremely uncomfortable, that's fantastic, because hopefully that'll mobilize you into action. So I'm going to leave it right there, and hopefully everybody will go to the show notes and get what they need. I want to thank you for being my guest, Moshe. It's been a pleasure as always. And I want to thank my listeners. Thanks for taking the time to invest in yourself and to see things differently from a different perspective, and being willing to try on something new with a beginner's mind, knowing that that's only going to make you greater. And until next time, Katy G out.